Hey, good morning, legends. It's Mr. Cherry, and I am here today to teach you how to solve equations using square roots. So this will help you with IXL skill BB6. So on that IXL today, you'll be seeing equations that look like this. And in each of these equations, what you'll notice is that there is only an x squared term or a variable squared in each of them. And so what I'm going to be doing today is taking you kind of step by step through different types of problems, and we're going to be looking at the different solutions we can find. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about the three different possibilities that could happen when you solve an equation using square roots. In our first possibility, you might get an equation that has two solutions. And this occurs when a number squared is equal to a positive number. So our examples include x squared equals 25. And the reason this has two solutions is because I could take 5 times 5, and that would give me 25, or I could take negative 5 times negative 5, and that would also get me 25. Another example could be something like x squared equals 64. And again, the reason we have two solutions here is because x could be 8, because 8 times 8 equals 64, or x could be negative 8, because negative 8 times negative 8 also equals 64. The second possible solution that we might get is that we might actually get an equation that has one solution. And this occurs when you get a number squared equal to 0. In our example, there's really only one here, would be if we have something like x squared equals 0. And the reason that there's only one answer is because there's only one number times itself that equals 0, and that would be 0 times 0. The last possible outcome that you might get is you might get an equation that has no solutions. And this occurs when you have a number squared that is equal to a negative number. And so here's an example that we have. So for example, if you have x squared equals to negative 16, I want you to think that there is absolutely no number that you could multiply by itself to get negative 16. So for example, maybe you were thinking, well, Mr. Cherry, I could do negative 4 times negative 4. But don't forget our rules of multiplication that say if you take a negative times a negative, it would equal a positive. So there is absolutely no number times itself that will ever equal a negative number. And again, we have another example here where we have x squared equals negative 100. Now in the next part of this video, I'm going to go through some examples of how I solve these equations. So please make sure that you are writing these notes down so that you will be prepared for IXL Standard BB6. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here's our first example of how to solve an equation. And we're going to be looking at the equation x squared equals 49. The nice thing about this problem is that it is literally set up to solve. And the way we do that is by taking the square root of both sides to find the value of x. All right, so when I say square root, that might seem confusing and kind of overwhelming, but I want you to think of it this way. It's basically asking you the question, what number times itself will give you 49? And if you thought about the number 7, you would be correct. But you should also remember that x could be negative 7 here, because negative 7 times negative 7 would also give you positive 49. And so that is why the answer is going to be the positive 7 and the negative 7. So again, anytime you have a number squared equal to a positive, all you need to do is take the square root of both sides. In our second example, we are looking at something a little bit different here. What I notice is that the x squared is not by itself. So what we have to do is we have to do a little bit of work, a little bit of algebra work first, to make sure that we get the x squared isolated or by itself. And so just like we've done on all our other solving problems, our first step is to get the x squared by itself. And so what I'm thinking about is this minus 15 right here on the x squared side. I'm going to cancel that out and bring it over to the right side of my equation. And the way we do that, just like before, is by undoing that subtraction by adding 15 to both sides. And what we get is we get x squared equals 0. Now remember, this is that one solution case because we have a number squared equal to 0. All right, so this is example 3, everybody. And in this case, whoa, we've got a bit of a mess that we need to clear up first before we can solve anything. So just like I said before, the idea is that we want to get that x squared by itself. And so we've got those algebra steps in our tool belts to do this. So just like before, we're going to undo the minus 10 by adding 10 to both sides of our equation. All right, now, the next thing that I notice is that we have a coefficient or a number in front of the x squared. And so what I need to do to cancel out this 3 is I need to make sure that I undo the multiplication by dividing both sides by 3. And in this case, I'm left with x squared equals negative 4 over 3. And remember from what we talked about in our 3 possibilities is that when you have a number squared equal a negative number, that means that there's no solution. So we would literally be done with this problem. All right, everybody, here's our final example. We have 6 times x squared equals 24. And just like in our previous 2 examples, we're going to have to do a little bit of work before we can take the square root of both sides. And in this case, we just have a number in front of x squared. So that means we have multiplication. So to undo that multiplication, I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 6. And this gives me x squared is equal to 4. And as we know, 4 is a positive number. So that means this problem will have 2 solutions. To find those 2 solutions, I just need to take the square root of both sides. So if I take the square root of 4, I want you to think about what number times itself equals 4. And if you're thinking 2 and negative 2, then you would be correct. So all of these problems are done very similar. The trick is understanding how many solutions we might have. So to summarize our learning, here's what we know. Number 1, if we're going to solve an equation using a square root, we must first isolate the x squared. That's what we saw in examples 2, 3, and 4. Second, after isolating the x squared, I want you to determine if you have no solution because the x squared is equal to a negative, you have one solution because the x squared is equal to a 0, or you have 2 solutions because the x squared is equal to a positive number. And finally, our third step is if the problem has 1 or 2 solutions, take the square root of both sides to find the value of the variable. So these are your notes. Make sure you write them down and go back if you need help. Hey, as always, you know that I'm available for you from 2 to 3, Monday through Thursday. I'm on Google Meet or via email. So hit me up if you need some help. I will talk to you all soon. Take care.